So let's go to that same product action I was looking at earlier. So here I've got that product action. I'm going to grab it, and you'll notice that if I came about it and grab my action first, Salto is going to detect that I have two required dependencies. This means that these are required in order for this action to function appropriately within the configuration, and they don't exist on my target. So in this case, I need to have Salto bring them and create these records as well on my target. Now, if I were in a case where I had already deployed, say, product 2 earlier, and that was already on my target, that would not show up as a required dependency. It may show up as an additional dependency if I had changed it between the two environments, or it might not show up at all if it's exactly the same. But Salto is going to show you the current state of these two environments and what needs to happen to have a successful deployment and get configurations where you want them in the state you want them. So in this case, I want to move these two. And if I come back to my top level, you notice I don't have any other missing dependencies. I have a couple of other dependencies, so additional ones, and I can review these if I want to. These are just related, related types that have been changed. So in this case, I've changed my product rule type, and I have a related product action. I don't need to take either of these changes because they're additional related changes, but Salto elevates it so you can look and make that choice as an admin. Decide, do I want to go for really small deployment? Do I want to bundle everything up and send it all over at once? Is this work in progress? That's all made visible in Salto. So at this point, I'm going to hit preview, and we'll let this run here for a second. This is doing a little validation. You'll probably be familiar in Salesforce that if you want to do a pre-deployment validation, that's available for metadata. It's not available for things like CPQ, but Salto will do that validation for you and do a pre-check to make sure there's no missing dependencies, no configurations that don't make sense, things like that. And if there is anything that needs to be fixed, missing dependencies, invalid data, we're going to let you know before you hit deploy. So in this case, I'm green, kept it pretty simple for the demo. So at this point, I can hit deploy, and keep in mind this ticket ID up here. This is going to come in handy in just a second. So in this case, you'll see I don't have a change here, so it's just an addition. But we have both the element view, which is very good for admins and people that don't like to see configuration files. And then we have the Nockle view, which is our raw config. This is what's the source of truth behind the scenes. And this is what we'll convert back into XML and push to the server when it's when it goes to Salesforce itself. So let me deploy this, and then I will. That's just so if I need to disable any triggers, Salto lets you know to do that prior to the deployment. So I'll fire this over, and then we'll have a look at what Salto does automatically to give you a lot of these this tracking for what we're doing, how we version it. And then if you're using a ticketing system like Jira, which I am, you get some really nice integrations there on your actual Jira tickets. So we'll let this go here. And keep in mind that if I were doing a metadata deployment at the same time, let's say I want to push a couple triggers or maybe a couple of custom fields and profile permission set updates, I can do all that at exactly the same time in these same deployments. I don't need to go to two different products or do two different deployments. Salto has the intelligence to know how those things are related and which things can go to which APIs and in which order. So very, very handy. Now, a couple of things I'm going to go ahead and push to Git. And Salto, I like to show this. This is everything that Salto is doing. It's grabbing our config files. It's going to go ahead and give us a nice little message. It's going to version this in a Git provider that you bring to the table. So it's not a Salto Git provider. It's actually something you can use, GitHub, Bitbucket, whatever you prefer. And I'm going to push. This actually can happen automatically. So in demos, I show it happening, but we can just as easily toggle a setting that'll send that automatically over to Git. And now what you have is we have a couple of things. I've got a version on GitHub, and on my Jira ticket here, if I refresh this now, I should have a record of that deployment right on my Jira ticket. So if you're using something like this, some other ticketing system, you'll see that nice message and a link to exactly what is changing. So if I want to see, go here, I can see exactly what that file was. I can see the full commit. And if I were right here, they're all additions because brand new things I've promoted. But if there were a change, let's say I was changing code inside of a trigger, I'd see exactly what it was before and exactly what it is after, without ever having to be a Git expert, right? So I get that tracking over time. Very, very handy. And exactly the same thing that happens in metadata, you now get in your CPQ data.